Board of Education for Thursday, December 19th, 2019 is called into session. Ms. Stowe, would you lead us in prayer?
I will. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and we thank you for the many blessings which you have bestowed upon this school system. We thank you that you have brought us safely almost through a whole semester, and we give you the praise for that. And we ask that you would be with us tonight, you would grant us wisdom as we make decisions that impact our students, our employees, and this whole area which we represent. We ask these things in the precious and holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I recommend approval of the agenda dated December 19th, 2019.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the agenda dated December 19th, 2019. Any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 I recommend approval of the minutes dated November 7th, 19th, and 26th, 2019.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the minutes dated November 7th, 19th, and 26th, 2019. Any discussion?
I haven't had a chance to look through this, but it is reflected, the change that Sherry found.
Yeah,
Okay.
It is.
the draft.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sherry, for pointing that out.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 I do want to just take a moment, if I could, to welcome Dr. Rachel Ballard, who is our Director of Equity and Innovation. She's going to do a great job, has already hit the ground running, so we appreciate her being here with us. All right, informational items. Mr. Solly, the high school academic guy.
I'm gonna say I gotta
Good
go
athlete.
back and
Good athletes,
We
athletics.
have
be booed on
athletics
that a
the
little
line
bit.
right
Been
now.
having that conversation.
We just had that conversation.
all right, good deal. Well, 3 people have asked me, have said it in kind of different ways, like, how long is this gonna be tonight and stuff. I don't know, I'm getting a little bit of a complex. I don't know if I
Now that you ask.
carry on. Yeah. We're done. From my perspective, I'm good with it, so if y'all are. But, yeah, I do want to point out a few things. I don't think there are, hopefully you've had a chance to look over it. I tried to highlight any changes that we're proposing to the academic guide this year, and I don't think there's anything that is particularly controversial, or most of it's very much semantics and just kind of cleaning up a few things. But on page 4, you'll see that, again, we just tried to clean up a little language there, adding a sentence there about sort of students' responsibilities to make sure that they contact school or colleges or universities that they may be wanting to attend to make sure that their AP credits and dual enrollment credits will, that college or university will accept those. On page 5, where the last few years we've had some specific times for the length of time that a block class should be meeting, I've changed that verbiage to a little bit more of an approximation, and that's really to give schools some flexibility in creating intervention time in their school day. Everybody, we felt like they needed just a little more flexibility depending on the various constraints that they have to work under, how many lunches the school serves, what time their kids go to the Career Tech Center and get back, and all of those kinds of things. It just varies a little bit at each school, and so wanted to give them some time, some flexibility with the length of their classes. On page 5, at the bottom, I have included the final exam exemption policy that we have been using this school year. If you'll look at the slide here, we did pull the attendance data through 78 school days for the last 3 years. So in the 17-18 school year, you can see that we did not have an exemption policy. And through 78 school days, we had a little over 25,000 absences, okay? During the 18-19 school year, we had, I guess I would say, a little more restrictive final exemption policy. And through 78 days, we had 18,000 and a half absences, okay? And so this current year, for the 19-20 school year, through 78 days, we had 19,462. We did that on a per pupil, so you can see in 17-18, the average student through 78 days would have had 4.4 absences. Last year, 3.2 absences, and this year 3.3. So we felt like the current exemption policy was still doing what we wanted it to do, decreasing absences. I did not run the number of chronic absences, but I feel certain that, that they would mirror similarly to what we had last year at this time. But on a per pupil basis, the number of absences are pretty negligible right now. So it seems like this exemption policy is working. Again, encouraging attendance in school, but is not causing maybe some of the issues that the more restrictive policy did. Questions about that, or is there additional information I can pull for you about that? I know we've had some questions in the past.
Yeah, I continue to disagree with this.
Sure.
I was telling Alan, if we could just research Madison City, Huntsville City, Limestone County, Morgan County, and just see how the other schools are handling this. Because if we're the only ones that have to exempt exams to get our tardies and absences right, that just doesn't seem to be right to me.
Yeah. I certainly can get you any things those districts do, if anything, to regarding their exam days.
Do you know what that's a good question. I mean, we never really thought about that, but do we even have a scintilla of idea of what they might be doing in our sister districts at all?
I'm not aware of any of them having a procedure or policy like this. I'm not aware. They may have it, but I'm not aware of it.
That's a good something to look at.
Based on, and this is just through word of mouth, so we need to verify with the school systems.
Yeah.
But Decatur, I think, lets their students exempt 2 each semester, and but they can't be the same 2. Like, you can't do math both semesters.
Right.
You have to spread it around. And then, as far as I know, Madison City has no such exemption. I don't know about the rest of them.
But the question is, what are they doing to curb the chronic absenteeism? How are they approaching that, I guess?
Right.
And I don't know if part of it is again, if our chronic absenteeism rate is much better than theirs, again, I guess the theory behind this is we'd rather have them more days of traditional school than kind of worrying about a final exam, but that's y'all's call to make. I'll certainly get you any information that you need to make that decision.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the rigor. I mean, it just seems like it's just too lenient.
Yeah.
One of the breakout sessions at our conference at the beginning of the month dealt with this, and it seems that across the state that systems are challenged with ways to get students in school. And, I didn't share what we do, but, they don't really have a plan, but they know that if the students are not there, they're not learning. And that is the bottom line, more than just being exempt from a final. They have to be there to learn, so.
But the other thing is, when you exempt, then like my kids, they didn't have to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, so that's 4 days. They're out of school. They're not learning. So, I mean, you're missing school either way.
But they were just exempt from the final, right?
Yeah, but they don't have to go Tuesday or Wednesday because they're not taking the final, so they don't have to review. So that's 4 days they're out of school that they would be in school otherwise.
I don't know about that.
But they could take.
And I can tell Tim didn't either.
So they can still take the final They just
They
choose.
can, right?
That, as a parent, that is a hard sell.
Sure, sure.
But you're gonna go to
right.
school when everybody else is out.
Sure, so,
take
I
that
mean,
final.
I had that same conversation with my son. He's trying to raise one of his grades up by a point, and I said, hey, look, you can take that final exam, and it doesn't hurt you. So, those conversations we had as a family, and he chose not to take it as well. So, but I do understand, it's tough. It's tough.
From our administrator's point of view, again, they feel like this policy helps them with students that that may not aspire to go to college after high school. Since we have a pretty high rate of students taking AP courses, and those students take AP exams, which are, no disrespect to any of our teachers, but that AP exam is the most rigorous test that the student will take in high school. The thought is that our students are not going 4 years of high school and not taking a rigorous comprehensive exam. That's the position that they have and why they have asked for this. But again, if there's information that I can get you to help you make the best decision for all of our students, I'd be happy to get you any information that I can get you. But if you'll, so I'll follow up with our surrounding districts, find out what they're doing. I can pull the chronic absenteeism data comparison. I apologize for not having that already, but I'll have that. And but other than that, you know what we're trying to do. It's just whether or not this fits our philosophy or not. And if it doesn't, then we won't do this.
To Sherry's point, and I wonder if there's a way to modify this. So instead of, you can still allow the student to be exempt, not from the exam, but exempt from we already do that. If they take the exam and they get a bad grade, it doesn't hurt them.
Absolutely.
So instead of exempting them from taking an exam, they still have to show up and take the exam. But we apply the standard of, if you get a bad grade on the exam, we're not going to count it against you. So they'd still go to school, and they would still take the exam, but we apply that, like I said, we applied that, you don't have to, it doesn't hurt you to take the exam.
And when we...
That way they're not out of school for 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah, and when the schools were working, when we were working on the first policy to bring to you, the model that Ms. Rucker, I think, mentioned maybe Decatur uses, where you can exempt an exam. Not every exam, but you can pick or something, that may be an option as well, that may be something as well. Or we had come up the model where if you're in the 9th grade and you meet this, then you wouldn't take your social studies exam. If you're a 10th grader, the exam you can exempt is science. If you're 11, something like that. So it's very plain, very cut and dried on the front end. But I think our schools, if obviously the data is better, but about kids being in school. However, point taken. Does it come at another cost that is, that creates another problem? So we're certainly willing to explore other things if we need to. Number 6 there, on page 6, we had some language in there referring to iNow. iNow's going away, so just tried to clean that up and refer to a student information system. At the bottom of page 6, the word percentage was added just to make sure that people understood, what we were adding to a grade there. On page 7, we added that section on the value of AP, just as, again, it's been a big part of our high school curriculum. We have more kids than pretty much any district, more qualifying scores. It's a big part of what we do. And just want to make sure people understand, where the value of that comes in. On page 7, also, the schools, we've talked with them about developing a form that parents and students sign if they sign up for both college prep and/or AP, just to make sure that they know. Sometimes students and parents, they'll let their child get into an AP class, take it for a week. We don't like this. It's too hard, want to get out. And that's one of the things that we really try to, if you're going to accept the rigor of this, then, we're kind of holding kids' feet to the fire. We're going to stay in the course. And maybe there's a form that we have. Sometimes parents have mentioned that they didn't know that that was the case and stuff. So possibly with the form where we spell that out, we spell out the fact that the student has to take the AP exam to get the weighted grade, some things like that come up. Probably something that we need to do. On page 8, we've added a new dual enrollment program. Auburn First is Auburn's attempt to kind of mimic the University of Alabama's early college program. So it's an online program that will allow students to take college courses at both of our two largest state universities and stuff. So we'll be giving students opportunity to do that. On page 9.
Tim, hold on one second, real
yeah.
quick. Are we actively pursuing other colleges and universities to go into this dual enrollment? USA, UNA, UAB, other schools, Troy State?
We have not actively pursued others. At one time, we did have an MOU with UNA to allow dual enrollment with them. We really felt like we wanted to support our local colleges and universities. Alabama A&M, we've not had an MOU with them. We have with UAH, we've had with Calhoun, we have with Drake, and then the two online dual enrollment programs through Alabama First, and now that Auburn has a program, felt like we would do that. But we're not opposed.
No, I'm just asking.
There's not it's kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen the other. I mean, if when we've been approached, if we feel like their program fits the needs of our kids, we certainly would consider that and do that.
I met with someone at the chamber today, and that was one of the things that we discussed. Because
Expanding
there,
the dual enrollment.
well, there was a program that they had that had several layers of schools that we were going to look at. So we're going to meet and discuss those things.
That's fine. Thanks.
On page 9, we have, so far, like we have really very few students, if any, that take advantage of credit advancement. However, since the state has allowed this opportunity, the conversation each year is kind of like, what if kids do take advantage? We kind of wanted to put some limitations on that, so we just put some verbiage in there that we would limit that to 2 courses that a kid could do credit advancement in, and none of our weighted courses. So college prep, AP, none of those courses we will do credit advancement for. So anyway, that's again, that's not something we've had a lot of kids take advantage of. On page 11, we have included some clarifying guidelines on how to transfer grades to our Madison County Schools grading scale when students transfer in from other districts. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a little dicey depending on, if they're coming in from a system that is on a 7-period day, if they're coming in from a system that's weighted advanced courses in the past, what does that look like on our transcript kind of thing? So just tried to clarify that a little bit more and what that looks like. On page 13, just included the virtual school virtual academy on there since it's is a standalone school now. The last thing I want to talk about on pages 20 through 29, currently we have the current mathematics courses that we offer that are still in this document. However, when we bring this to you for a vote, we may possibly transition to the new math course of study. And that would be something, so I wanted just to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about the new math course of study. Hopefully, you've had a chance to read a little about it in the news and stuff. Kind of our thought right now is grades K through 5, in reviewing the standards, not tremendous changes there over what we have right now, so I don't think that's gonna, I think we could implement next year in K-5 pretty easy and probably nobody would notice, the standard's very much the same. A change will start in grade 6, and the State Department gives us the flexibility to either implement these courses next year or use next year as a transition year and implement it starting in the 21-22 school year. But whenever we implement it, the first change would happen in 6th grade. So college prep math would go away in grade 6. Kids would take the same mathematics course grades K through 6 whenever we implement this. Starting in 7th and 8th grade, for our accelerated students, they would take accelerated Math 7 and accelerated Math 8. We would no longer offer a credit-bearing course in middle school. So where now we offer Algebra 1 in 8th grade as a credit-bearing class, that would not happen anymore. Students would only be allowed to gain credit for mathematics unless they transferred in from another district that had given credit. But if they're in our district, they wouldn't get a credit-bearing math class until they enter high school. Right now, the thought is next year, probably offering grade 7 math and grade 7 accelerated math, grade 8 math, still offering Algebra 1 next year, because in order to take accelerated 8th grade math, you had to have taken 7th grade accelerated math, and since kids can't do that, I think to offer Algebra 1 for one more year would be probably the right thing to do, but we'll look at that some more. Then starting in 9th grade, students would, instead of, as traditionally, they've taken Algebra 1 in 9th grade, they take geometry with data analysis now. That's the 9th grade course. The second course, which can also be taken in 9th grade or can be taken in 10th grade, is Algebra 1 with probability, and the third course is Algebra 2 with statistics, okay? Every student, except for students who take accelerated grade 7 and accelerated grade 8, have to take all three of those courses. Have to take all three of those courses. If students take both accelerated classes, they don't have to take the Algebra 1 with probability class, okay? They don't get credit for it. They just don't have to take it. They can take 2 other math classes. Some things about the new math course of study. Students will be expected to take 4 years of math, largely because they don't get a grade 8, there won't be a credit before high school. Right now, we have offered an A and B version of algebra. We've offered an A and B version of geometry. That will no longer be allowed. So every student will take geometry with data analysis. Every student, Algebra 1 with probability, unless they take the 2 accelerated courses. Every student, Algebra 2 with statistics. Every student, no exceptions. Right now, we have several variations of Algebra 2 that are different levels of rigor. Every student will take these 3 courses or their equivalent, okay? They do, instead of offering an A-B version, they do expect schools to offer a lab option to coincide with this course. So if a student is in geometry with data analytics, they would have a lab to go with that. If they possibly would, be a student that may struggle in that course, they would be assigned to 2 math classes in essence during that time. So, so there will be some There'll be some challenges in implementing this. Talked with Mr. Evans and Ms. O'Bannon earlier this week. We have the funds right now, if we want to move forward this year with our high school classes, to buy the textbooks. That's assuming our State Department gets us an approved list for us to go through the adoption process through our district. Financially, it may be a good reason to go ahead and try to do high school this year. We have textbooks that we need for the K-8 schools. Mr. Evans done a great job of acquiring those ahead of time, so we're well taken care of K through 8 resource-wise, but our high schools may need some new resources. We're still comparing the new standards to the old standards for grades 9 through 12, just to see how drastically different the courses are. If they're not, the resources are not quite as big a deal. But if the courses are substantially different than they were before, I don't think it's fair to our teachers to ask them to teach something and we don't have, whether it's textbooks or whatever we would purchase for them to do that with. I did include these slides in your board folder. These just show the progressions. You can look through those at your leisure, and if you have questions, feel free to let me know.
So this, what'd you call it? Advanced 7th and 8th grade?
Accelerated.
Accelerate 7th and 8th grade.
Yep.
The standards in those two courses conceivably are going to prepare a student to omit taking Algebra 1. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. There are Algebra 1 standards embedded in both of those courses, along with the essential standards of grades 7 and 8 math over those 2 years. So,
And high school students, these courses will be taught in one semester in your block. Is that
Yes,
correct? Not a
yes,
year-long course?
that's correct.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Yeah, good grief.
I mean, what's the potential for leaving kids behind?
Well, right now, Sparkman's math courses are all year long,
Yeah.
so they won't
The
be that way
advanced
anymore.
placement.
Now they may have AB classes, so they may have alternating day
Right, that's what
classes
they
that
are.
are all year long.
Okay,
They could be that, I mean, but not every day, all year long, yeah.
And do they have any way of getting to calculus A and B?
To get to calculus, yes, there's a pathway. So more than likely, a student that aspires to go into calculus would be an accelerated math 7 and 8. 9th grade year, they would take the geometry class, 10th grade, algebra 2, 11th grade. Pre-cal, senior year, they could take Cal A, B first semester, BC second semester. That's the pathway that the new course of study recommends.
What happened to trig?
Trigonometry is embedded, I believe, one of the main changes, it is more embedded in the pre-calculus course now, where currently it's in the Algebra 2 with Trigonometry course. So now the pre-cal, but that is one of the things, and this is hot off the press, so there's still some questions out there about it. But whether pre-cal is, I think with the change in Algebra 2, the standards there, pre-cal probably is going to be a necessary requirement to take calculus because of the trig component. Under our current standards, a lot of that trigonometry was taught in Algebra 2, so we've had a lot of kids not take pre-cal and be very successful in calculus. That's probably not something that's going to continue to happen. For our high school courses, the emphasis on statistics, you can see it, every course, probability, statistics, there is an emphasis there, and that comes from workforce development, that we need our students, when they graduate, to be able to apply the mathematics that they're learning, to understand the statistical capacities of mathematics, the probability of that. And so that's one of the big things that has driven the change of this course of study. It is also aligned to NAEP. That was one of the big things that, they really wanted to make sure that we were preparing kids to do better on that exam. So hopefully it will.
So you have, I'm sure, major plans for working with your instructors in high school to pull this off. This is drastically different, I would say.
Maybe, maybe not. Again, some of the courses we've not looked at them to the depth that I can say this with certainty. We know that some of those 3 courses, there are some different standards in those courses, but it's probably one of the kind of frustrations in the argument about the math course of study. Math is kind of math. I mean, 2 plus 2 is the same here in California and Singapore and, pretty much everywhere. So our math standards, there's only so much you can do with them to make them significantly different. Now, they may be in different courses, and that's where we've got to work with our math teachers, I think, to make sure that they really understand this is not your geometry course anymore. You can't just teach geometry the way it's been taught. We've got to make sure we make the mind shift and include the other mathematical components that really want to be emphasized here. But hopefully it won't be as drastic. But to answer your question, Ms. Stowe, yes, we certainly will. That's the decision, I think, is do our teachers feel comfortable doing this next year, or do they need a transition year of studying the new course of study and then implement it in 21-22? Last year, when we were at this time and we were having the same discussion, the consensus was at that time our teachers wanted to move forward and implement the new courses the following year. Knowing that we could supply the textbooks and other resources they need, that gives me a little more confidence that it may be the right thing to do. But I kind of lean on them to make that, to give us some guidance in that. So if they feel comfortable with it, then, maybe why wait? So,
Are there textbooks that align with this, or is?
I don't know that
They're
there
gonna
are
be left to
textbooks
their
that
own
align with
devices.
anybody's course of study. I bet they will have a sticker on them that say that they do.
Sure.
But, we don't want the textbook being our course of study anyway, and we want our teachers to, pull resources that align with our standards wherever they get them. So, but anyway, that's.
I didn't mean to take
No,
too much time,
no.
sorry.
That's kind of where we are. I'll get you the more information, and if there's other things about the exam exemption thing, Mr. Perkins, if you'll let him know or myself, we'll be glad to get you any of that other stuff. And if you have other questions about things that we've talked about this evening, just let me know. Okay? Thank you.
All right, administrative items. Item A, I recommend approval of the October 2019 financial statements. Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the October 2019 fiscal year-end financial statements. Any discussion? Any questions? If there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item B, I recommend approval of the resolution to approve the 2019 C Series refunding and capital outlay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Outlay tax and anticipation warrants as attached.
And I'm going to recognize Mr. Francis and let him get up to the podium before we move on further.
Good evening. In front of you is a resolution authorizing the issuance of the 2019 Series C warrants to refund your outstanding 2010 A and Bs, except for one maturity of each in 2020 for economic reasons. Those are not being refunded. And in addition to the refunding, the majority of the savings are being used for capital outlay purposes. This is similar to the deals that you did in October, except these are tax exempt. This series is being secured by your 6.5 mil ad valorem tax. And that's the basis of it. I think you have received the resolutions in the past. We can go over anything you like in further detail.
Okay. So at this point in time, I need somebody to introduce the resolution. It's one of the board members.
I introduce the resolution.
Okay, so let the record show that Mary Louise Stowe introduced the resolution. Are there any additional questions that we may have for either Mr. Francis or for Karen as it pertains to the proceeds?
It was 300,000-ish.
Yeah,
Yes.
right around
Is
there.
it still that, even though one of them didn't get in there?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
Is it
you.
still 300,000 about?
Yeah.
It's one of them, did you just say one of them didn't get in this agreement that you thought would have?
No. What I said was for economic reasons, there was a 2020 maturity in both the 2010 As and the 2010 Bs that were not refunding.
Oh, okay.
Because there was not economic justification to refund those maturities. All the other maturities of the 2010 As and Bs are being refunded and will all be paid off by March 1 of 2020.
Bonnie, that was 305,000. What was the total savings in the end, correct? But we wired into our account was the 305.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
Is there any additional questions? I do need a motion and a second before we can continue on.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the resolution to approve the 2019 C-Series refunding and capital outlay tax anticipation warrants as attached. Is there any additional discussion or questions of Mr. Francis or Karen? If there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item C.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you very much to both of you.
Item C. I recommend approval of bids as attached.
It's okay.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval for the following bids as attached. Is there any questions? If there are no questions or discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 I recommend approval of personnel items as attached, including Addendum 2.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation.
Is there addendum one? I'm sorry.
There are two addenda.
Two addendums.
Yeah, there's two. Yeah, Addendum 1 and a 2.
Yeah,
Just making sure. In the book?
yeah.
Right, and a 2 is the one that's
Yes, sir.
attached to
I
it.
understand.
Okay, so I recommend the approval of the following personnel items and addendum number 2 as submitted. Is there any questions concerning this? If there's no questions or additional discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Do you want to talk about the assistant superintendent?
Yes, yeah. I just want to take an opportunity to welcome Mr. Malone, who will be our new Assistant Superintendent of System Services. He has his vast background and things that he's done in our district, and it's going to be a benefit to us, and so we're grateful to have him on board. All right, item E. I recommend approval of contracts for services.
Motion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation approval of contracts for services. Is there any discussion? If there's no questions or discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Item F. I recommend approval of supplements as attached.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of supplements as attached. Any discussion or questions? If there are none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Administrative item G. I recommend approval for authority to authorize Mary Stump to negotiate and enter into a resolution session agreement, mediation agreement, or settlement agreement in any special education complaints from the day of this board action through December 31st, 2020 regarding special needs students.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval that the board authorize Mary Stump to negotiate and enter into a resolution session agreement, mediation agreement, or settlement agreement in any special education complaints from the day of this board action through December 31st, 2020 regarding special needs students. Who is the I in the last sentence here? I will.
Superintendent.
Okay. The superintendent will make sure that the board receives a copy of each complaint and is updated on their status of these matters as they proceed. Any discussion? For Sherry, you weren't here the last week, or the week we had that special session to do one of these. It was, were you here for that in the early morning? Okay, so you were here for that, I'm sorry, okay. So, is there any discussion on this and the length of the recommendation? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All righty.
That is it.
I did want to remind everyone about our next board meeting. Our next board meeting will actually be held at Sparkman High School, which is January the 9th, 2020, at 5:15. We just kind of decided that it'll be a good idea to have board sessions at each one of our high schools to give a community an opportunity in those areas to actually come out and experience a board meeting. So our first one will be at Sparkman, and if board members so desire, if you could come a little bit early, we can put on our hard hats and tour the construction that's actually taking place over there.
And this meeting on the 9th will actually be a work session.
A work session.
With a special session if necessary for any administrative stuff.
Absolutely.
So what time is early? I mean, to get there.
Four-
She's got to make the trek.
4:15.
I have to do what
4:30,
y'all do all the time.
4:15,
Okay.
yeah. Just so that we have enough time to actually to tour it without rushing through. And I'll make sure I'll send out an update.
And I believe it's going to be in the cafeteria.
It will be in the cafeteria, yep, at Sparkman High School cafeteria.
Is there food?
We can arrange that.
We might. It's a work session. So, okay. I'll open up to the board if there's anything that each member of the board would like to say for good of the board before we adjourn. I wanted to say thank you to those that were able to come down to Birmingham for the winter conference, for the Alabama Association of School Boards Winter Conference. Thanks to Nathan, I think you were able to stay the whole weekend. But thank you very much. It was my first opportunity to go down to that event. It was very, very informative, and I enjoyed getting to be a part of the delegation to approve some of the new things and also to hear some of the great speakers we had.
Angie stayed the whole time.
Did she stay the whole time? Okay, I didn't know if she had come home because her son was sick.
Yeah, she did stay.
And I do appreciate Angie biting the bullet and not coming to the meeting tonight so she didn't have to expose the rest of us to the flu, which she apparently has gotten. So I appreciate that.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, she's been homesick for the last couple of days with the flu, so.
Thank you, Angie. If
Yeah,
you're
thank you,
watching.
Angie, for biting that bullet and not coming to the meeting tonight and getting everybody else sick. So, I want to wish my fellow board members, the staff here, the administrations, the faculties, the students, and all of our families out there a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year. The last day of school for the semester is tomorrow. We'll be on vacation until we come back on the 6th of January is our next.
That's when students come back.
Students come back on the 6th.
Teachers come back.
Teachers come back on the 2nd. So, but happy holidays to everybody. Enjoyed the time off, well deserved. Looks like it's going to be a really nice Christmas day, 65 degrees and sunny. Can't beat that in December in Alabama, especially here. So it could be snowing. So, if there's nothing else, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? If there is none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.